It's the Full Force News Burst, brought to you by GeneralsJoesReborn.com with me, Diagnostic 80. We've managed to grab the immensely talented illustrator and designer Tracie Ching for an interview, so let's get on with it, shall we? Carrying on with our classified series, we have managed to get an interview with an awesome and extremely talented illustrator, designer, and very specifically for us, the artist responsible for that stunning classified series Snake Eyes box art. Yes, that's right. Please welcome the amazing Tracie Ching. Great to have you with us, Tracy. How are you doing?
It's so good to be here. I'm hanging in there, I guess, like the rest of us during these times, right?
Absolutely.
I feel like no one gets to say the word like, oh yeah, I'm doing good. It's like reflex at this point.
True. It's horrible, isn't it? I mean,
yeah.
And then of course, like, we might as well mention it now. Obviously, Rest in peace, Chadwick Boseman. Unreal news, horrible news that he passed away recently. And I mean, like, 2020 just, for me, it's like a best of album of all the worst songs ever so far.
We get to have no nice things this year.
No,
we get to have nothing. It's letting us have nothing.
The worst. But in any case, obviously, a huge shout out to Chadwick Boseman there. And what I would kind of say as well, Tracy, is obviously we're going to get into the interview and we'll be talking a little bit about your work on some of the amazing kind of posters that you do, a lot of the movie posters and stuff. And obviously you've got stuff in there like, Avengers, Black Panther, and all that kind of stuff, very related. I mean, how are you taking that at the moment this morning, if you want to talk about it quickly?
Yeah, it was really difficult. Like, I think the news hit at least when I read it, I think it was like 30 minutes after his family had released their statement. And I was really glad that his family could be the ones who made that statement.
Yeah.
That it wasn't like TMZ or some weird like staff leak. And so they got to start that narrative off right. It's just disbelief.
Yeah.
Because so young, such an incredible, unstoppable, actor, creative, activist person, human, right? It's hard to believe.
Yeah.
And then like what's more is that he was having this battle that none of us knew he was fighting for 4 years and turning out masterpiece after masterpiece of important work.
Insane.
While doing all of this stuff. And so like, it speaks to, I think, a lot of just a whole like slew of things, I think, really at the end of the day. But I'm just like kind of reeling and further depressed. I just like, it's really like we just can't have anything this year.
No, 2020 is probably...
It has to take everything.
It's terrible. It's just been one after the other. I mean, like, it just seems like as an entire community on Earth, we're like having to suffer through ridiculous things. And then there's the personal tragedies. And then there's the, like just the individual hardships and stuff that everyone's having to go through, like, more than many others. But still, it's just... I don't know. It's just the worst. And obviously we had to make some sort of comment and mention of that. It happened. It was so fresh still, and it's just the worst.
Yeah, it was a gut check, like just a straight up blow. And like I felt nauseous last night because it's just like, we just never ends. It's just never ending.
What's next as well? Like seriously.
Yeah.
In any case, let's get on to you. The focus should be on you on this one, not on anything else right now. We're going to get to that amazing work you did on G.I. Joe. Spoiler alert, I really enjoyed that artwork you did. But first off, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and how you got into this line of work, please?
Yeah, it's always a really hard thing to describe oneself. And my career was deeply non-linear.
Yeah.
So it's hard to like kind of give the elevator pitch summation of it. But
you've got 3 hours. Go.
I know. I originally came from a fine art background.
Yeah.
I was a sculpture mixed media major and spent some time in the fine art world and really realized that was not the space for me, at least as I was trying to enter it. And in terms of real, like true fine art, there was no like low brow that I had gotten into. It was all like high art installations in like Brooklyn and Manhattan. And I'm just like, this is not a good place for me. And so when I graduated, I was like, okay, I have art skills, but like, what am I going to do with it? And so I had been really into like the resurgence of silkscreen movie posters.
Right.
And I was like, okay, well, if I'm an artist and I want to try to monetize it like graphic design. And so I kind of just started teaching myself like Creative Suite and eventually landed on Illustrator. And so for 4 years.
Right.
I like hustled at that and then eventually became a full-time freelance vector illustrator. And
Fantastic.
so I'd always loved portraiture. And so that's generally what I do now is silkscreen prints or illustrations specifically surrounded around portraiture with a cross-hatching style. Kind of marketing back to my old school, like intaglio, fine art printing background there, but in a digital form. And so, that's generally what I do now. It's a lot of commercial illustration and art for brands like Hasbro and others, where portraits are involved, even if they don't have a face, right? Like,
and Snake Eyes, obviously, with the mask, like there's no face there, but that you still did amazing work on that. Something I want to talk about those the actual movie poster stuff that I've seen you do, and obviously like political posters, and you've got loads of cool stuff on your website. Guys, check that out. I will obviously. I'll put all that on the on links and stuff so you can follow Tracy. I mean, that sounds awful, but I mean, no. So you can actually follow her online, not in like a horrible way, but yeah, like you can check out the amazing work she's done. And I mean, like, there's something so, I mean, well, okay, we spoke to Dan Mumford recently and did a little interview with him. I know you guys know each other.
Oh yeah, we're friendly.
That's amazing. And something about Dan's work that struck me was the color, the way that your use of color that he uses. And it's the same with yourself. Like, I love obviously the effect of having like, you know, the cross hatching shading, which like comes up quite a lot in the images, but always in like a different way. Yeah. And the use of color is so striking. And I mean, you've got some beautiful stuff on there. I mean, how did you like develop that style? How did that style kind of come about? Well, what point did you go, hang on, I've got my own style here? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And that, like, those are two really interesting questions. To just the first one about like color, right? And how did that come about? I had a sort of like chicken and the egg scenario that like I wanted to pursue silkscreen posters in a weird way. And so in order to do that, it has to be a limited palette, right? So it was 2, 3, 5 colors, whatever you have. And so I would have to be really discerning both for the technique in terms of cross-hatching and how the illusion of blending and color transition works, in addition to the colors like chosen. And so I still work in a limited palette, even though a vast majority of my like commercial stuff that you see that goes out, like Snake Eyes is digital. It doesn't need to be a limited palette, but it's like this practice that just turned into part of the style and really fit not only like the mark making, but also, you know, some of the early and still maintained final products that I work with. Yeah. And so, in terms of like, how did that style itself evolve and not just how color is handled? I think that the idea of like, what is my style is like this question that plagues artists forever. Yeah. And I knew early on not to like beat myself over the head with that one. I was like, I'll find it eventually. Yeah. Like, what do you like? And so I would just look around and be like, you know, I love the way that transition looks on that cheek. You know, how did they do that? And then I'd try to reverse engineer it. And I was always very much drawn to Illustrator and vector work because of the hard lines, because of that style of making marks. And so I always gravitated towards true line work. And so I would be like, okay, well, how did they do that? And like, oh, they used this line thing. And eventually over time, the lines got more and more and more complex. And now they're just stupid. So when people ask me to describe my style, I'm just like, lots of lines. Yeah,
that's perfect. The funny thing is like, I know like as a creative myself, without tooting a horn, I must admit, I don't know why I asked that question to all the artists, because I know it's just going to be the same. You know, it's so difficult to just pinpoint some sort of area of, you know, where you were working. Like it is a long drawn out process where you develop and you create and so on and so forth. And I still to this day don't know why I keep asking that question. Because
I mean, it's one of two things. Either you had really strong influences.
Like the eureka moment or something, you know what I mean?
And then you're like, I want to be that. And I think we all have that. But some really study under a school or a house. Right? And then the rest of us kind of just like stumble on it. Or like we only see it in hindsight, like the path and the influence after the fact. But I think most just stumble and like keep stumbling. Yeah, of course. How you look at one part of your career is going to look totally different, you know, later on, because me 5 years ago looks very different than me now.
That's amazing. But yeah, again, like love those all those posts I was checking out on your website. I've kind of been in contact with you for a number of months now, like trying to kind of set this up. I know like I was kind of back and forth. Since then, Well, in fact, since I found out that you'd done the work on Snake Eyes, I've just been kind of like, this sounds like I'm a stalker now, but I've been kind of like checking out all of your work that you've done in the past and just been really like blown away by it. And obviously, like I said, we will get to Snake Eyes in a second. Before we get to that, how do you like approach these projects? Now, what I mean by that is like, you know, are you working to briefs a lot of the time? Are you allowed to kind of run free? Is it a mixture of both? I mean, take me through your kind of process on how you approach each and one of these projects that you've done.
Yeah, I'm somebody who really thrives with guidelines.
Yes.
I don't do well when people are just like,
do what you want.
Don't have a topic, don't have any like needs, wants, desires, just do something. I'm like, oh, too many options. Like, no. Too many options. And so like I lock up, I work really well. And it's funny because like the style itself, right? Like a lot of restrictions.
Yeah.
A lot of restrictions just in the process, like limited color, already a massive restriction, right? In theory. But I thrive with restrictive guidelines to an extent. And so I love working off of a brief. And most of the work that I do, because they're related to brands or IP that has a really well established or needs to be really strict, I have that in place. And so most of the time I am going off of a some sort of brief, whether or not they don't tell me, you know, like what position to put it in or, how to present them. They can give me like a vibe or a feel or examples from past work. But like I'm brought in to essentially flesh out this framework.
Yeah.
The framework exists and I need to just make it look a way. And so people know that they're coming to me to do lots of lines in like limited color. And so that's mainly the process, is fitting their need. I'm connecting A to C. Yeah. Right. And so I'm just making lots of lines to get them from that one goal to the other.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. And I'm like, one thing, obviously we can get onto Snake Eyes soon, but one of the things that I mean, we know that Hasbro approached a lot of artists in the process of this classified series, you know, kind of artwork for the boxes and stuff like that. I'm guessing that's the same situation for yourself. Did they come to you? What was it like getting that message, that email or whatever it was they contacted you on?
Yeah, I was the first.
Nice.
Yeah, because they were fleshing out, you know, this massive series.
Yes.
And so Snake Eyes was the first series because they knew they wanted to do like a special edition box for it.
Yes.
And so
loved your unboxing, by the way. Loved your unboxing video.
I did not expect it to be as like received as it was, let alone have like Hasbro be like, hey, can we have that?
That was
and
amazing.
Like post it.
Amazing.
I'm like, sure, I wish I had tried harder. Like whoops, I like definitely smacked the camera and my like Wi-Fi drops out like part of the way. I'm just like, sure guys, it's fine. Like I don't mind because it's already on the internet, but
that's
like
amazing.
Should have tried harder. But it was a lot of fun to share the excitement of it. And so the excitement was like in the beginning really flooring because I mean this project started a year and a half ago, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So long time ago. And so they were fleshing it out and they found me because they were trying to dial in on the aesthetic that they wanted for Snake Eyes. Not necessarily for the series, but at least just to start it off. And right around that time I released my Grim Reaper Metallica print.
Okay, right.
And so they saw them and were like, that's it. Like, that's what we want for this. And so they came to me, like, it was really funny. They, like, just dropped me, like, a message in my, like, Instagram DM to be like, are you interested? And I'm like, yeah, shoot me an email.
Did you think it was legitimate at first?
Yeah, I mean, the internet's really easy to track who's contacting.
True,
who,
I suppose.
And under what circumstance. And it, you know, it was a creative director. And so it was easy to find, like, Sean and, check stats or whatever. But, yeah, it was really surreal the whole time because I think everyone understands, especially when you're born like 80s, 90s, right? The significance of not just Hasbro as a brand, because they owned and still own everything from our childhood, but also just like the long and varied history of G.I. Joe and the fact that, you know, when they told me who I was getting, I was just like, oh crap, okay, so this is like it's not just like some like supporting semi-red shirt character. Exactly, I'm just like, oh, okay, so you're coming to play, and I'm feeling. Did you feel
the pressure? Did you feel the pressure when
it's like, oh god, because like with things like Metallica, with things like you know Snake Eyes, you know, there's such an understandable like vehement crowd.
Yes, yeah.
And you don't know how much of a fan or a fan deficit you have compared to others, and you're really afraid someone's going to come for you with a pitchfork in the night because you messed something up. And so there's a lot of heritage to like pay homage to, but still to create something new. And so it's exciting, but also like very scary for something you personally are attached to, let alone everyone else is deeply attached to.
Absolutely, I can imagine. I mean, never really think about it like that. I think sometimes, I think, God, I wonder if that's like I asked Dan if like having the Cobra Commander was because it's an iconic character. What was that? And he was kind of like quite, no, I wasn't that worried. I just, I was just excited. But like, I don't think about it like that. If you're kind of thinking about the fandom and how that's going to be received and stuff, like I can imagine that's just like, whoa, pull on the reins a little bit.
That's where I live too, right? Because these boxes are not for like, they're not truly for like the children. They're for us. They're for the adults, the nostalgia, the people with like, the skin in the game. Right? That's who it's for. And I work with fandom in general. That's my deal. And so like I've had to walk that line often, but this was a different, it was a much higher wire to walk than I've done with in the past. And so that was nerve-wracking and very new. I'd never done packaging like this before, let alone for a toy. Like I've done packaging for like beer and like Keel's boxes and stuff, but not something like this, right? Not on this level. And so a lot of like learning curves there, and I don't do full body either. And so like they were so helpful and like understanding and being like walking me through it. That's and just amazing. Being understanding. I was like, this is what I think. Is that going to work for your thing? Because I don't know what we're trying to. And that's the truth. Is I was the first. They were still trying to figure out what they needed. Like, did they want a poster? Because that was kind of the plan, but like it also needs to fit for the box. And so there was a lot of flex where we were trying to just like figure what the best scenario was. And then when they told me like who got backloaded behind me, where it's like Phil Noto, and like I'm like, oh crap, I was like, are you sure that I should be doing this one? Like, are you sure you just don't want to give me like, I don't know, like Scarlet, like matching girl to girl is a little like tongue in cheek, but I'm just saying, like, I get it if you want to like.
I mean, let's face it though, they chose well because, I know you're on the show and I have to say these things, but seriously,
you're a little beholden.
I know I have to. It's like I feel obliged. Otherwise, it would be a really weird, horrible, awkward interview. No, but seriously, like the illustration is astonishing. And coming back to what what you were talking about in that last kind of after that last question, let's talk about the actual art itself, because it is amazing. It's gorgeous. You had a lot to take into consideration, as you said. You'd never done the packaging before, but obviously you've got, again, like you also said, you work well with the kind of limitations. So obviously you're going to have to like fit it into certain areas and size and space and all that wrap around. I mean, how did you go about with the poses and stuff? Or did you come up with something immediately and be like, here you go, will this work? And they were like, yes. Or did you go through like a ton of different sketches and positions? I mean, how did you kind of go through that process?
Yeah, so the first, like the primary illustration, the one they used for the t-shirt and for the poster, and then is like the front spot on the box. That one was kind of just like the first.
Oh, nice.
It just came out that way. But work. I did like a lot of workshopping before I presented them with
of
something.
Course,
and there, like I said, there's so much history to go through. So I had to look like all the physical manifestations of like what kind of poses to do. Like, is he left-handed? Is he right-handed? Like, how does he hold various weapons? Because they wanted the Uzi included, but they wanted the sword up front because obviously they have that gorgeous weapon set. But so it was a lot to figure out the anatomy of it, since I don't tend to have to. But again, there was enough. Like there's so much, and like just like poses of like past figures, right? And like what have they used for campaigns in the past, and how can I use that to inform and like the twist of the body, and showing like, his like belt and like the new like backpack rig he has and all this other stuff. So you have to like show the goods but make it not like a clear subliminal like here's his new stuff. And so I like finally landed on it. I'm like, yeah, no, this is going to work. And then I sent them one because I just wasn't sure if I needed to do like a bajillion. I'm like,
like his 16 choose.
I just wanted to throw something on the wall and see what came back. Like, does this work? What doesn't? And then we'll go from there. And they're like, no, this is good. And I'm like, okay. I feel that too. but I wasn't expecting it. Like,
so that first thing that you sent them, was it as we see it now, or was it kind of like dialed back? Was Timber involved, etc., or was it just the actual pose?
And so in the poster and the t-shirt, Timber is absolutely at his hip.
Brilliant.
So it didn't make it onto the box because of the way it's cut and cropped.
Yeah.
But Timber is 100% like in that illustration, and I was like super jazzed about drawing. Timber part. I was just like, okay, let's finish Snake Eyes so I can get to
so I can do all those tiny little bits of hair.
Yeah, just like in the puppy feet. And
Timber is absolutely gorgeous as well. You've done a sublime job on Timber.
So much fun. There was and like that's the thing, is if you're looking at the right spots of like the box, you can see his tail. I think on the box, in the one little corner, which seems so random when you haven't seen the other the full illustration. You're like, what is that?
I must admit, when something that I haven't put in the questions, I apologize. I'm going to completely, take you by surprise here. But I know there's some things that it's one of those pieces of art where every time I look at it, something else jumps out that I hadn't noticed before. And this is how long has this been out? I mean, we were at Toy Fair when this was revealed.
And that was
February.
So
I was in the crowd as they were showing off the T-shirt and everything, and it was just like, oh, this is really cool. This is awesome. So cool. I know, I was there when they debuted your T-shirt.
I wanted to be there so badly, but I was in Australia for like a few months, as you know. The reason why this took a while to put together. And I desperately and we were talking about like doing signings or something for like posters there, and I was just so bereft that I couldn't be part of that reveal. And so I was watching it at like 2 a.m. in Australia. Wow. Like the reveal happened. And so it was, but that's so cool you got to be there. Tell me what it was like.
Oh, it was great. It was
like
brilliant.
You live vicariously.
They name dropped you, which was nice. And then obviously that's something that obviously in the past Hasbro have always, we didn't know Hector Garrido was the artist for them for years and years on the original artwork. Because Hasbro was always a thing of like, you do the work for us, but then it's enveloped into the company, and the company just put their brand on it. It's just as it is. That's just how it is. So the fact that they're highlighting artists individually for all of these pieces is just amazing. So knowing that you'd done that, and it was like, oh, cool. But then so you see it and you think, right, Snake Eyes, brilliant. And then you can just about make out Timber, and it's like, but then more you look at it, you're like, oh god, yeah, you can see it. It's nice and clear. You see that the text kind of jumps out to you, like kind of the Japanese text, the Arashikage symbol, and then there's other aspects that I wanted to kind of talk to you about. Now, what I got and one of the other things I haven't mentioned yet, I'll leave to the last, because it only just appeared in like the last few weeks that I noticed it, which is crazy. Obviously, you've got rain coming down, you've got the glitches. It kind of looks like he's being monitored by somebody. Was that the kind of idea behind that?
It wasn't so much. I think that, again, there was glitching in the original Metallica poster.
Yes.
And they liked that, like the new and the old being smushed together, right? Because you have the old school engraving style. And obviously Snake Eyes himself references a lot of very, time-honored tradition, like ancient, right? Things. But still very much new age tech, still very much relevant today and in the future, right? There's a lot of futuristic things that come into play. And so there was this push and pull between the fact like that digitized glitch thing where there's old and there's new, and it's this like smushed together aesthetic. And so we weren't so specific, right, and saying like, we want this to come across. It was setting that space for you all, right, to create that narrative. And so it's really exciting for me to see, how you interpreted that and how that speaks, because they're easy to miss if you're not looking.
Exactly.
There's so much going on. And so that's really neat. I'm glad it got caught up, because I think a lot of people miss the glitching there, or it just kind of looks like a graphic element, which it is. But there's supposed to be this this pull of new and old and tech and ancient, right?
That's amazing. And again, it's beautifully done. Like that is really cool and everything. And it just looks to me like he's being almost like watched by some sort of like like other CCTV or something that. So
all the gadgets, right? that would be surveilling the Joes.
I love it. Now the other thing that jumped out to me, obviously we talked about your use of color and the shading and aspect of that, and it's almost like Snake Eyes is only visible by the lighting from both sides, the red and the blue lighting. Same with Timber. And I love that. It's almost like it adds to the stealth aspect of him as a ninja and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But one thing that jumped out at me recently was in the bottom right-hand corner of the poster, you've got almost like an homage to him and Storm Shadow's relationship at the Arashikage temple with the kind of, the temple kind of structure in the background. I've only just noticed that, and I'm like, what? So I mean, again, is that just the mixture of all of his history in one image kind of thing?
Yeah, and the Hasbro asks specifically for how we could work that in. I was like, well, on the poster, because again, we didn't know how we were operating and what we needed to focus on. And so I was like, in the bottom corner, we can add, conflict. Yeah. Right. And whether or not you wanted to interpret it as, Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes or whomever, right. Or just like a reference to conflict, to engagement, to that kind of learning and training. Yeah. So it's, again, really neat to see how that's interpreted. And it was supposed to be, I wanted it to read, like, obviously when you design things, you want a specific read. Yeah. Right. So obviously Snake Eyes had to be first. Yeah. And then there's an order of which you want it to hit for Snake Eyes himself, and then Timber, and then the Ashikage, and then I wanted to make it as imperceptible as possible. Yeah. The fight scene, because otherwise it competes and it's a little strange if it's too strong, because it's not part of that central image. And so it had to be like a really subtle vignette in that corner. It's
really effective as well, because I've just noticed that in the last couple of weeks I've been looking at this art in depth so long, and I missed that as well. It's brilliant. Love that, and the lighting's great, and you've got that. There's so many kind of almost like you feel like it's in Japan with the lighting, that kind of almost like the neon kind of signage, kind of reflections and things like that. It's just absolutely gorgeous. Sorry to drop that one on you without any.
I do a lot of live interviewing, so this is nothing.
Oh, good.
You didn't ask me anything weird or
in that case. No. Well, actually, one thing I didn't ask you at the beginning, which I probably should have done, was what was your kind of connection to G.I. Joe as a growing up? I mean, were you into it? Was it one of those things where, you had the toys as a kid kind of thing?
Yeah, and so that was a tough point, because I think for all of us 80s and 90s kids, G.I. Joe just was ever present, right? Saturday morning cartoons and the action figures and all of the things, right? It was always there. It was always somebody's PJs or some friend's t-shirt, right? It was always ever present.
Merch.
And a lot of the gender alignment, I was told that they weren't for me.
Oh, that sucks.
So go play with Barbies.
Oh,
right? And so that weird and totally swept, because I was never a super girly kid.
Right.
I'm well, that's dumb. Why can't I play with them? That's dumb. But it was still just a thing. I'm oh, okay. And so I would monitor, as you would, because an ever-present thing.
Yeah.
And so as I got older and had a chance to engage with that franchise, without weird gender norms applied to it.
Exactly.
I got to have that, but I didn't have the same kind of experience with it. I think many young boys did.
Of course, yeah.
It was literally denied to me. And so that actually was a very big portion of it. As much as I would have loved to have had the same kind of history that other of my peers have, right, with that franchise, I also kind of relished that a bit, that I got, as a female artist, as a kid who was told this stuff wasn't for me, I did the illustration for that box.
Amazing.
And so it's a little bit of not so much of a revenge or a comeuppance, but it feels a little spiteful. Yeah. Right? It's well, look at me now.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that though. And funny enough, it goes both ways, because when I was a kid, I remember going around a friend's house. It was very young. We were organizing a prom in junior school. It was crazy. And so I went round her house. Man. Yeah. And she had a Barbie dream house, and I was absolutely blown away. I'm this thing is my height, and it is
yes, it's 4 stories.
I had nuts. It was nuts. And I was I want to play with this. And then she also had She-Ra, and I was I was a massive He-Man fan. And I absolutely adored the She-Ra cartoon as well. And not just that, but Gem. I was a massive Gem fan. And
it was good.
Honestly, they had some
retro.
great cartoons,
Yeah. Oh, the music and the illustration is crazy good.
Insane. But like, you know, the fashion's really brilliant, and like the color is just totally, it's amazing. So like, I was like massive. I was massive into that stuff, and like I was, but again, being a boy, you can only have G.I. Joe. Well, actually, my parents weren't like that at all, but it was I suppose the societal kind of viewpoint.
There's a pressure.
Yeah.
There's an ever presence that stuff exists within. And you as a kid don't know like when to be like, no, that's dumb.
Yeah.
You feel it and you adhere.
Yeah.
Even if you have supportive parents, right? You still have to like
absolutely
consider, your friend's gonna make fun of you because you're talking about how rad
yesterday's
episode of Gem was, right? Like,
yeah, and that I think that is the truth. Yeah, like my I've never at any point in my life, my mom and dad have never said anything like, you can't have this because of this gender norm or whatever. Like it's never been the thing. But like you say, it's the pressure from peers and stuff. It was weird. But coming back to that, I love the fact that you got to do Snake Eyes, and it's like, and I personally am thinking, the perfect revenge.
Yeah, like I think a lot of what I do is like a little bit embedded in spite, and I'm realizing that I was just like, well, I'm going to show you later. I was like, we're going to file that away, and I'm going to come back later, and we're just going to have to sit with this.
Well, I'm really happy you did it. Now, I want to come back to Timber actually quickly. Was that did Hasbro ask you to include Timber, or was that something that you wanted to do yourself because, you know, in the history he's prominent with Snake Eyes?
Oh yeah, no, I like 100% wanted to include it, and luckily that was part of Hasbro's brief.
Oh, brilliant!
So we wanted to include it, and it was. I know a lot of people bring up how Timber's not like first and foremost on that box, and we had tried, but again, in trying to figure out what that line was going to look like, what the final boxing was going to look like, all that kind of stuff, it kind of just like it ended up not working out. And so he's been there since the very beginning. I think Hasbro Pulse posted that rough draft like and color option a while back upon the release. Yeah,
he does actually appear on the side as well, Timber.
Yeah, and so that's where they're like, can we flip it? Because originally he's like they're like attacking together. Yeah, and like and so like there was a lot of like finagling for that side panel because the Snake Eyes on the top.
That's really cool as well.
They came back like a year later and were like, so they like the specs had changed and the series had been more fleshed out by other artists where it's like, so here's what we found. And so we had to come up with a second pose. And that one I needed a lot of hand holding on. We went through what must have been 3 or 4 different poses, like some even going to near final before it's just like, no, this isn't right.
Wow.
And so they really held my hand there for that one, and we finally like cranked it out. But that was like kind of the thing, is having to retrofit the original design from 2 years ago to like the newer, more standardized setup. And so like he's there, but not like right there, right? But that he was absolutely included in the original from both sides, from mine and from Hasbro. So
that's awesome.
You didn't want to leave him out.
The second pose as well. I know you say you have a lot of hand holding, but he does look really cool, and like it's almost like in a similar motion to what he's doing on the front, almost like the next phase of his like movement. Almost was that like was that kind of something you took on board there? Yeah,
it was definitely one of those things where they wanted a similar pose to it, but they needed to fill that slimmer section, so they needed to be more front facing, which was very difficult for me. And so like I wish I could share it, I wish I could find it. Their creative director, who like just transferred over from Marvel Comics, had like literally drawn over, and I like love it. I like saved it.
Amazing.
He like drew over it to like kind of like correct the anatomy. We're like, here's where we can punch that up. And I'm like, this is amazing. Like I need somebody like you all the time forever. Like I was like, yes. I was like, that's fine. And as soon as they sent that, I was like off and running, and it was done.
Yeah.
But like I realized they didn't want to like step on me or make me feel strange about it. And I feel bad that I eventually made them like kind of like correct it. But like it would have taken so much time and effort. And so it was like this amazing, like just like draw over to get like their proportions right, or to like really punch up a leg where like again I don't work in full body, and like comic illustrators bang out that stuff in like mind-boggling speed, and I'm like slaving. I was just like, okay, well, how does this knee come up and look in the foreshorten? And so like it was incredible, and they saved me so much time. And that's what I mean by hand holding. They really
that's amazing. But again, it came out.
Shirt for me.
It came out really well, and it's one of my favorite box art.
Team effort.
Really, really cool. Yeah, we'll call it that. We'll call it team effort. Well, on that side, that one side panel, the rest of it's amazing. I mean, were you given much in the way of reference from Hasbro? Did they give you a lot of like images? Obviously, they wouldn't have had the toy at that point, would they?
No. They like production hadn't even like begun. I don't think. I think they were still doing like the test runs and stuff at that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they have an immense library. And so they sent me, a bunch of just things. They're like, here's what we are just like throwing at you now that we think might be helpful because the lighting was right. And like, here's how he's looked in the past, in our photo shoots for the figures. And so they provided a bunch of those and they're like, but let us know if there's anything like more that you need.
Right.
And mainly like it doesn't quite apply. And this was the interesting thing. They gave me the CAD mock-up for him. So I knew what his helmet looked like, what his body looked like in different, like, just like literally like 180
like the 3D
sections. And so it didn't really matter how much reference they gave me because I had to jerry rig a lot of it. The figure didn't exist. I didn't have a reference. And, his helmet was going to be different. His armor was different. The weapons were different. It was mainly just like, how do you want his body to look? And then lay all of it over that.
Interesting.
So it was, the reference normally is really integral for me, especially where faces and portraits are concerned. They need to make the likeness hit the mark, but that wasn't the case here, which was like super different than anything I'd ever done. So a lot of like growth and a lot of like new things learned and done during that process.
Yeah. Was the rain, that addition of the rain, was that your idea?
Oh yeah. I mean, if it's 80s or 90s and there's an action scene, it's either raining in the dark.
Yeah. So,
right? Because if it's at night, it's almost always raining.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Strange. And so like, it was going to have to be rain.
That was a great effect though, isn't it? It also reminds me of the one, I'm not sure if you watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, but it's when Mac does his like last finale dance in the rain, in the dark. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Rain
in the dark.
Exactly. I'm not gonna put a video up of that happening because it'll just be, I won't even put an image up. I also really like the way
little call out boxes in the bottom.
Yeah, just tiny little. Yeah, I don't want to get told off by YouTube. So, and we've already discussed the glitches, which is a lovely like effect again. Just so cool. The heavy Japanese influence, we've also discussed that as well. The Arashikage like symbols and that kind of stuff. I mean, what were your thoughts going into this? Like, were you thinking like, what Japanese or what kind of Asian influences can I kind of bring into this? Like, did you have to kind of like, go through that little process, or were you just like, oh, that looked nice there, bang, bang, bang kind of thing?
I was conscious of that just because like, as somebody who does not speak that language and who doesn't like, I'm of Chinese descent, not Japanese. I definitely did not want to tokenize that kind of imagery as best as I could. And so it was mainly just making sure it was as on brand as possible. And so I definitely built that Ashikage. Like it's on the katana, it's on his belt buckle, and it's in the background. And so like it's built into that space, but I didn't want it to be like super in your face.
Yeah.
I think Hasbro was the one that came back later and said they wanted to add it in the background, and we had discussed it making look like a neon sign.
Brilliant.
And so that was something that we had dialed in on after the fact. And so the kind of like neon signage in the background, and then the temple in the lower right portion where there's that kind of conflict going on.
Yeah.
The only real like overt references, and there's still like, short of the temple, everything else is really just like atmospheric in its reference to, because neon signs are like not unique to like, Japan and
could be
Tokyo,
Vegas, couldn't it?
but there is this connection that we have. And so in context of Snake Eyes with the neon, you understand, that link. And so it's this weird, like, amorphous.
It's quite interesting that you've got the new and the old mixed for Snake Eyes and the G.I. Joe brand and that kind of stuff, but then it also works on the Japanese level too, because obviously that culture is both in like way beyond when it comes to kind of like future tech and all that kind of stuff, but then at the same time has that really embedded cultural traditional kind of aspect, ancient, it's quite interesting that it works on both levels in a sense. And again, not an accident, you did that on purpose, so that's really, really cool. obviously you were happy to get Snake Eyes as a character, and you did mention obviously that you felt some trepidation, but were you like happy with the outcome by the end of the actual project? Were you kind of like, were you like, when you sent it to Hasbro, were you like, yes, this is I'm happy with this, and you know, boom?
I knew what I brought from my side.
Yeah.
Right. Like in looking at the final, I'm like, yeah, I don't know how much more, right, I could have brought to this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that, like, yeah, at this point, like at that time, that was probably the best I could have done, which is great. But you're never sure if your best is going to be good enough, because as with so many illustrators and creators, we have to create especially freelance, right? You're kind of isolated.
Yes.
And for this job, given how out front I was, they couldn't share any of the images from the other artists with me, so I could get a feel, right, of what the series was going to look like. I was really out there on my own until much, much later, when it was already kind of a done deal. And so I knew that what I was bringing, for me, from my side, was as good as probably I was going to be able to make it. So there weren't a lot of regrets there. I was happy with it. They were happy with it. And that's what really matters.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely.
And then after that, we're not going to know if like the fans are happy with it until it's too late anyway. So don't need to worry about that.
Were you happy with the response? Because it seemed to get like a really like fantastic response. Like everyone seemed really positive about it. The t-shirts sold really well. I mean, like, you know, how did that feel?
It's always nice, right? Because again, you're worried about the pitchforks. You're worried that you're not going to see something because you looked at it for hundreds of hours.
Yes.
And then like somebody looks at it for 3 seconds and sees something really problematic that you didn't see that entire time.
Yeah.
And so that's always a massive relief. And so like, it's always hard for me to build in that kind of like ego. Like I'm excited it landed fine. Yeah. But when it's something like Snake Eyes and like that deluxe edition box that they turned out, like I don't like write it off like my art sold that, right? Because that's bull. Like, Snake Eyes sold that box, right? Like, and so like I'm just along for the ride. I'm writing coattails at that point, right? Like I'm the makeup artist for the real stuff, right? And so like for me, like I'm always excited, right? When people like it, when they find something in it. But I don't have that expectation, right? As long as it doesn't like die, as long as it's not a train wreck, that's a win. Yeah. And so like, I was very excited like for myself, but I can't say like, oh yeah, I was really excited with how well like the t-shirts did because Snake Eyes sold those t-shirts. I didn't. Yeah.
But I tell you now though, that I think your art has a lot to do, or it kind of contributes to the overall kind of package. You know, you've got, you know, the action figure, which is stunning, isn't it? I mean, it's like next level. All of the accessories, the details, the textures. But then you get into that deluxe box, and it's like, you know, the slip cover comes off, and you've got the beautiful design on the slip cover. But then you take the slip cover off, and you've got an even better version of it underneath, like this textured, gorgeous.
Well, they have the foil like packaging too, which I didn't know they were going to do.
So gorgeous, isn't it?
Yeah, I didn't know until after that they were going to do the grayscale version for deluxe.
Yeah, I see.
They did it in full color first. The red and the blue for the edition you could find in stores was the original vision, and then they separated them out. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. Yeah. And so
it looks really good grayscale, doesn't it? As well, like it. Yeah.
It did. And like as somebody, early in my career, I worked with like grayscale and then pop tones. So it was mostly like black, 2 grays, and a red. Yeah. And so like my work never doesn't look well in that color palette because that's where it's sourced from. Sure. And so when they showed the silver, right? I'm like, oh yeah, no, that's good. Good choice.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. I approve. Yeah, and obviously, you know, you've got that aspect. You take that off, you take that out, and they've done the kind of tattoo art on a print.
I know.
Which was like, I was just like, this is insane. Like there was so much to that deluxe packaging, to the figure. But I have to admit, like I have to say, you know, your artwork as well brings so much to that package. Like it, you know, without that, you know, it loses something. It really does. So I think that, you know, you can say that Snake Eyes sold it, but you had a very strong hand in its overall superior quality. So congrats.
I appreciate you, and that's why, like I say, I'm like the makeup artist for the star. Yeah, right. Like, I made it look pretty, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if the goods aren't there. Right?
Exactly.
So, like Snake Eyes is the goods, brought the goods. I'm just making it, look look a certain way.
Amazing.
For a certain debut.
And I suppose like in kind of closing, you know, if Hasbro came calling again, I just imagine, I'm just going to assume you're going to say yes for something like this, because they've used so many artists on the line. More figures are coming out. More figures are on the deck.
Yeah,
it's got to come round. It's got to come round again to you, hasn't it? At some point. I mean, like, you know, would you do another piece for them?
Yeah, I really appreciated the creative team, the marketing team at Hasbro. They were wonderful to work with, and Sean Kenny, who is like my handler for all that, really masterminded a great deal of this and handled it, you know, personally, is wonderful. Just as like a person, I got to meet him at New York Comic Con last year.
Awesome.
In person, which was like a really nice thing, because you never get to put, you know, like emails and like shake their hands in real life most of the time. And so I would adore working with that team, literally on anything. I really doubt, to be quite honest, that I will see another, like, I'm definitely not going to be in another like classified series like character. I don't think. And so like, I'm sure at one point I will come back around to Hasbro, but as to like which of the many properties they have and for what iteration, I'm not sure. I mean, they have that film coming out, so who even knows? At this point. So I hope it does. I know that there's an intention, but whether or not the right project comes up, I guess we'll
have to see. Well, Hasbro, if you're listening, because I know they do, and Lenny, I know you listen to the show. So, you know, get Tracy on something else again. Not that I need to tell you. I'm sure you're going to anyway. Her work is incredible. Anyway.
I was told quite a few watched that unboxing video, which was like deeply embarrassing.
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. And
it made it and they're like, it's so authentic and real. I was like, yeah, because I was really happy. It was a great mail day.
Not just that, but I mean, how long did it take you to get that figure? I'm like, damn, you should have been first on deck. It should have been like, here's the prototype.
Again, I was in Australia.
Oh, I see.
And then with COVID, their offices are shut down.
Yeah.
So the boxing came later, not only because like I was nowhere near this country for 3 months after it was like released.
Yeah.
More than that, like understandably and gratefully, I'm very happy that, you know, that crew is not in that office, that they get to telework and be safe. And so, yeah, when I just like pinged them about it, I was like, should I like start looking for it on aftermarket? Because I really want to just like look at it. And I didn't get to go to stores and see my box on the shelves, which is like one of the worst things ever.
I know,
I've done a lot of commercial packaging, but to not see my Snake Eyes on the shelves was like, and not to see it at like the convention was just this massive loss that I was like grieving. So when the box, like they worked so hard to get it to me as soon as they possibly could.
That's cool.
I so appreciate them for that. They like rush shipped it to me because they're like, yeah, we got into the office and they're all there and we're going to send it. So it literally showed up like 2 days later. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is the only experience, authentic experience I get to have with this job that I can share. And so I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but we're putting this on the internet. So like we should all share in this moment because everything sucks except for maybe this. So
I thought it was great. Really enjoyed it. We actually reposted it ourselves as well on the Full Force. So apologies for spreading that for you.
I put it out there.
Yeah,
I gave
your own fault.
The green light. So like, I'm not worried about it because I posted in the first place. But I'm just like, yeah, I wish I'd worked a little bit harder on it.
It was great, and it was like you said, it was a truly, genuinely happy response to getting it. And I mean, I was the same, honestly, and I do review videos a lot of the time. I did a Snake Eyes, the deluxe unboxing way back before it was even, I think, started to ship. We managed to get one for the show, beforehand. So and even then, I had to keep re-recording things because I was like getting giddy because it was like the best action figure I've ever seen, and the box and
cool, the hard case with the spot gloss and like the poster, and then just like all the cool little pieces and
the
like
weapons rack
out. I haven't taken any of it out. I don't want to touch it. Like I still haven't touched it. I'm just like, you're gonna stay mint in box forever. Mint in like foam.
Mint in foam. That is the new description of a mint package. Anyway, Tracy, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for jumping on and chatting with me about this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm really glad that we could finally make it work because schedules were insane when I was on the other side of the planet, and then trying to figure out how to make it work. So I'm glad we could do it, even though it's belated and maybe not riding the wave of original release, but at least we got to have a chat about it.
The Full Force podcast does not ride the wave of like at the moment. It is always at least 6 to 8 weeks behind the curve, and that's fine. I'm quite happy with that.
You sidestep mistakes when you go on first wave.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's been a pleasure. Would you consider coming on again at any point in the future if maybe, another Hasbro kind of project popped up?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I don't know if it's going to be like as applicable to the Full Force as this one is. I love chatting. So.
We do all sorts of 80s kind of brands and stuff. So, like, yeah, if you get on the Gem, if you get Gem or any of that stuff, I'll be like, yeah, we're contacting you and you're going to talk to me about Gem.
Yeah, that would be like the coolest ever. Such good costume, such good color.
Oh, it was amazing. Well, anyway, Thank you so much, Tracy. It's been an absolute pleasure. That's it for this installment of the Full Force News Burst. Thank you to my awesome guest, Tracie Ching. See you next time, guys. And as always, Full Force. Make sure you get involved with the discussion by liking, sharing and commenting on these videos, and as always you can keep up with the show after listening by following on Twitter @The Full Force, liking the Facebook page facebook.com/The Full Force, and if you would like to contact the show you can message us on either of those platforms with feedback or questions. We have also started a Patreon page, so if you want to see your name up in lights on these videos or enjoy exclusive bonus content, then check out patreon.com/The Full Force Podcast or click the link on any of the posts this podcast appears in. Full Force.
G.I. Joe fans, welcome to Cobra Convergence 5. Cobra Convergence is the G.I. Joe fan community's month-long celebration of G.I. Joe's eternal enemy, Cobra. Please join as your favorite G.I. Joe podcasters, YouTubers, photographers, and cosplayers present new Cobra content for the entire month of August.
G.I. Joe, the Full Force Podcast. Half the Battle, Special Mission Force, Comic Tropes, Toy Polloi, Plastic Battles, Scorched Earth Creations.
Every day in August, we'll spotlight a G.I. Joe fan creator with new Cobra-related content. That's a dose of Cobra every single day of the month.
Talking Joe, a G.I. Joe podcast. Merry Mercenary Cosplay. Order of Battle podcast. Cobra Island. SEO Toy Review. MacDowell. Nate Myler. Fun School Roni.
The full lineup of creators is now available at hcc788.com. Make sure you subscribe and follow each one so you don't miss anything.
Joe Motion Videos 82, JLS Comics, What's on Joe Mind Podcast, The Human Mechanism Mark II, Green Yeti 907, My Side of the Laundry Room, The File Card Podcast, Real Hector Canadas.
We want every G.I. Joe fan to get involved, support the fan community, and show us your creativity. You will find instructions at hcc788.com for how you can join the convergence with your own Cobra creations.
Joe Fan 82, Jay Bonnet, codename New2Vero2, Painted Plastic, Joe Colton Cosplay, Hooded Cobra Commander 788.
It's time to turn the world blue. Cobra Blue. Go to hcc788.com right now and get ready for the convergence. Oh!